Hello everyone, this is Richard from King's College London again. This time we're going to be, or I'm going to be looking at the IELTS speaking exam. IELTS is obviously very important, and getting a good IELTS score is obviously very important if you want to get in a good university like King's College. And today we're going to be looking at the grammatical aspects of the IELTS speaking exam. It's sometimes an aspect of the speaking exam which is neglected a little bit. And we're going to be looking at what I call, or what I like to call, a functional grammar approach to the IELTS speaking exam, and I'm going to be explaining what that means in a minute, or indeed in a few seconds. So functional grammar, what is functional grammar? Well, it is a complex term, but basically it means that we are concerned with the social and the communicative role of grammatical structures. Basically, what are you trying to do with the grammar? What are the functions of these grammar structures? How are they actually used in real life communication, written or spoken communication? So that's what we mean by functional grammar. Now, if we look at the speaking exam, the examiner is going to ask you a number of different types of questions. Now, typically they are going to be testing the following functions: comparisons. Can you compare and contrast things? Cause and effect. Can you express good cause and effect relationships? Can you argue? Can you give an opinion in the correct way? And very often as well, they'll be asking you to speculate about the future. Can you use a range of different grammar functions, different grammar structures to talk about and speculate about the future? So those are four very common functions that are going to be tested in the IELTS speaking exam. And here are some example questions just to let you see real questions that try and tease out and test those particular functions. So for example, you might be asked, how is your hometown different from? There's the key phrase, different from how it was 20 years ago. So here you're being asked obviously to make a comparison across time between your hometown now and how it was 20 years ago. Cause and effect. Well, what effects there's the giveaway word effects, what effects can watching television have on children? Here, you're being asked to express and talk about cause and effect relationships. And finally, do you think, keyword there, do you think shopping habits are likely to change in the future? So here we have opinion and speculation all mixed up in one question. You're being asked to give an opinion. The word think gives that away, but you're being asked to speculate and talk about the future as well. So very often questions will test not just one but two functions, and you have to be very alert for the key giveaway words and phrases like different from, effects, likely to. Okay, now, very importantly, as soon as you kind of know, okay, I'm being asked to talk about this particular function, your brain is going to have to work pretty quickly to come up with a range of different grammar structures that can carry out and express those types of relationships. So for example, comparison, you might be, well, typically you're going to be having to use comparative and superlative structures. Warmer than, the warmest, bigger than, the smallest, greater than, etc. And of course, you're going to have to do the same for each of those major types of function: cause and effect, giving opinions, and speculating about the future. So I'll just talk about and introduce one or two phrases, one or two grammar structures that you can use to do those types of jobs. What about comparison? Well, we've already said that comparative and superlative adjectives are going to be very important here. So warmer, the warmest, the greatest, etc. Also adjectives and adjective phrases, the same as, different from, also very, very important. And also, it would be very useful if you can show your knowledge of what we call subordination and coordination. So for example, a subordinate sentence: although London is a wonderful place to live, it is incredibly expensive, or becoming more expensive. London is a wonderful place to live. On the other hand, it is also, unfortunately, very expensive. So your knowledge of subordinate phrases and subordinate sentences and coordinating sentences is also going to be tested here. So this is another structure that is very useful for expressing comparison or contrast between two or more things. Cause and effect. What about cause and effect? Well, nouns and verbs are very important here. For example, verbs. Effect, influence, can result in, may lead to. And nouns like affect, consequence, cause. One cause of the rise in house prices in London, for example, is da 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 da. So nouns and verbs, specific types of nouns and verbs, are going to be very useful here. And also, very importantly, connecting phrases. Hence, so, consequently. As a consequence of the rise in house prices, as a consequence of the rain, I stayed home. So a good range of this kind of language, of these kinds of words, connectors, and phrases, very important when trying to express cause and effect relationships. So the examiners are going to be listening out for these types of words and these types of structures. And what about arguing and giving an opinion? Well, again, I think subordination and coordination very important here. Although London is a wonderful place to live, although I love living in London, it is becoming increasingly difficult to stay here because of the rise in property values, the rise in prices, whatever. So subordination, coordination, again, very important when giving your opinion. And also I would say certain types of verbs of opinion, think, feel, argue, contend. I probably contend that within the next 5 years I will have to move out of London because it's so expensive. So these types of verbs of opinion, very, very, again, important when arguing and presenting your own personal opinion. And finally, the future. What about speculating about the future? Well, I would say that there's probably 4 important types of grammar structure that are important here. Future tenses, of course. Will, going to, very important when speculating about the future. Something that we call hedging. Very often modal verbs or adjectives or adverbs that soften the language, soften the claim that you're making, may, might, likely to be. If house, again, sorry to keep using the example of the city that I live in, London, but if house prices continue to rise, it is likely, young people are likely to be driven out of the city because they can no longer afford to live here. Also important, conditional structures. If, then type structures. If house prices rise, then. Or in a more positive sense, a phrase like as long as then. Well, okay, but and this might happen, but as long as the government keep building houses, then house prices may, bit of hedging, may not rise so dramatically. And finally, of course, time phrase is very, very important when speculating about the future. Within the next X years, within the next 10 years, or at a certain point in the future, I would imagine this would happen. So all four of these types of grammatical structure are very, very important, I would say, when speculating about the future. Okay, so that's really just a very quick introduction to the types of grammar structure that you would need to do a good job in terms of grammar when doing these or carrying out these different types of functions. I'm not in this talk going to give you a detailed list. There are numerous websites out there, numerous resources on the internet that can give you detailed examples and practice of these types of structures. All I'm doing today really is just highlighting and making you aware of what I mean by functions, the importance of functions, and how you can use different types of grammatical structures to carry out those particular types of function. Okay, just in the last minute or two, just one or two very quick practice tips when thinking about using functions or considering functions to practice for the IELTS speaking exam. Have a look at some speaking questions. Try to identify the functions within the question. Do you see a word like affect, for an example? Do you see phrases like different from or different to? You know you're being asked to compare and contrast. So think about what function you're being asked to perform in this particular type of question. Very quickly, take a pen and pencil, pen and paper, brainstorm some useful grammatical structures, then try and answer the question, record yourself, try and use as many of those grammar structures as possible. Listen to yourself, or even better, get someone else to listen to you. How many structures did you use? Did you use them accurately? Okay, and just one final point, very quickly. Please remember that the examiners are listening out for these kinds of structures, these types of structures. So try to use as many as you can, but please remember also to vary the types of structures you use. Don't continually use one or two types of structures over and over and over again. But very importantly, please, ensure that you speak naturally. What you don't want is to fill your speech with lots of these different types of phrases so that you sound very, very unnatural. You have to speak in good, natural English. So don't overuse different types of structures. The examiner wants to see or wants to hear that you're actually trying to answer the question. But please, again, remember that examiners, really, and I used to be one, we're not that interested in the content of what you're saying. As long as you don't go too much off topic and start talking about something completely different, we're really listening out for the grammar, the vocabulary, those types of things. So try and use as many structures as you can and try and vary the types of grammar structures that you use. And that's it. Well, in the next class, we're going to be focusing on vocabulary and in particular looking at how you can work on and improve a very important aspect of vocabulary for the speaking exam, and that is collocation. Okay, thank you.